Boxed when I was 7 years old, and I got a pair of boxing gloves for a Christmas gift. Even though I had a lot of other toys and train sets and other things, I was just totally fascinated by this game of jumping around, hitting someone, making them miss you, hit them, let them miss you. And it was no really boxing on TV or no particular person or no parent that was involved with me. I was just totally fascinated, I guess, naturally by boxing. And I started having boxing matches when I was 8 years old and did very well as a little pee-wee boxer. I had about 15 fights, probably never lost any of them. This was in West Virginia. And when I came to Detroit when my parents divorced when I was 11, I didn't go to a boxing club or anything, so I started getting into street fights. And by the time I was 14, I was in serious trouble with the police for street fighting. Not gang fighting, I mean street fighting, it's a little different. And they were going to put me away permanently. And as a result, they struck a deal when my mother told her that I used to box when I was younger in West Virginia. So they said, if you go to a recreation center and in 6 months' time we see that you're still there and you don't get in any trouble, we'll try to suspend from sending you away to juvenile. And so I went to the recreation center and won the city junior championship. Then I won it the next year, then I won it the next year, and then I never had the time to even get in any street fights anymore. And next thing I know, 4 years later when I was 18, I was a National Golden Glove champion of the United States. And instead of being on the front page or the crime page in Detroit, I was being feted and treated royally when I came home with the first Golden Glove champion in 24 years and all of that. So I feel that boxing, amateur boxing, really was crucial in changing my life. I graduated from high school, an honor student, and all because of boxing. And you're getting the whole history of how I got into where I am, which I've never really taken the time to go into this before. After winning the National Golden Glove Tournament champion in 1963, I was going to turn professional because I couldn't go any further as an amateur boxer. And I couldn't find what I call good management for professional boxing. And the only really good offer I got was a group of guys who wanted me to move to California. They offered me a tremendous amount of money at that time, which was $100,000. It's a lot of money, but I would have to relocate and leave my mother and two younger sisters who I primarily was supporting. So I chose to stay in Detroit, and as a result, I became an electrician for Detroit Edison and was doing very well. And then I had a younger half brother who moved in to live with me, and he was 14 years old, and he said he wanted to start boxing. So by taking him to the closest recreation center after I got off of my job at Edison, which was a place called Kronk. And this was in 1969, so accidentally I went there just to take my brother 3 days a week to work him out. And he won the Golden Glove Championship. The next year I had 7 kids I put in, and they all won the Golden Glove Championship. And the story went all over the country. Young coach in Detroit only produces champions. I was 26, and that's when the Kronk legacy began. And even though I had about 3 years, I was totally out of boxing, didn't even miss it after I'd gotten married. And next thing I know, I'm back in it, and figuring I would just be in it for a few years, hopefully to maybe develop somebody to win a golden medal in the Olympics. And here I am, about 35 or 40 years later, still in it. But it was all accidentally. I never planned to be a trainer. There was never any coach or trainer that I really learned from or emulated. I just did everything naturally. Boxing came easy to me. I have great instincts for it. It's a gift. I went to the boxing gym when I was in trouble as a teenager, mainly because of the fact that that's what I had to do to keep from going to juvenile. And after being there, I got where I developed a world and a community of my own with the fellow boxers and the other. Even I was the youngest boxer there. Most everyone was always like 17, 18, and grown men. I was the youngest kid there. But it became like a world for me, and going to the tournaments, winning the championships, and it totally occupied all of my time that kept me out of trouble. And I guess the adolescent years are really the dangerous years for kids growing up. By the time that I was 19, 18 years old, I didn't have any desire to do anything that was illegal. That I went to the gym as an outlet and more of a recreation type situation. There was never no parental influence. There was no money motivation at all. It got to be a part of my life. Unlike many guys who have been successful, even not so successful, they get into the professional boxing, they kind of look, it's like looking down the fact of going back and being involved with amateur boxing. They feel they're beyond that. And even though I've had success beyond any professional trainer in the history of boxing in terms of my accomplishments and championships, and I still love the amateur boxing. That's where my heart is. If it was up to me, that's where I would spend all of my time, because in going back to the amateur boxing, I have a chance to not only see myself, I have a chance to keep contact with reality. You see so many of the poor kids that are there, they're training, that recreation center is their center of the universe for some of them. The situation at home is pretty bad sometimes for different reasons. Maybe it's financial, maybe it's even violence. And so those kids come there and they're beating those bags and looking at a way of maybe getting out of poverty. Many of the kids will ask me for 50 cents. Can I get 50 cents? And the 50 cents is to actually buy potato chips or something, because that is the only food that they'll have. And so one day I may be doing an HBO broadcast, and I'm living in the big hotels in New York and Las Vegas, big suites, limousines picking me up, and being involved with so many multi-million-dollar situations and people. And then when I get back to the gym that next day and take off those tuxedos, it keeps me connected with reality, that everybody isn't living the big life. And then I go right down to that little basement down at Kronk, and that's where I'm the happiest, because I see all of the little kids, a lot of the people who are older in life who have fell through the cracks, so to say, of our life, and they're less fortunate, and they're there. They're just as happy to see me, and I go in and we talk and we hug, and we start getting ready for one of the amateur tournaments. And I love being in the tournaments when you see one kid fighting, and then the next night you know he's going to be fighting the other kid that just won. And I've learned to really be friends with all of the kids. I go to the tournaments, whether they're my fighters from my club or whatever, I take pictures with them and have a lot of fun with them. And that's the type of relationship that eventually ended up with me having a lot of the top professional fighters, such as Evander Holyfield, who in the amateur days, his main nemesis was the Kronk fighter, a kid named Ricky Womack. But I was always very good with Evander. In fact, I would wrap his hands when his coach wasn't there, and he was fighting my own fighter, but I would try to help him every day after my fighter had finished training, never knowing that those type of relationships ended up with all of the fighters, a lot of them coming to me professionally. But I think amateur boxing is so important because it reaches kids that the other sports can't attract. A lot of kids cannot afford hockey equipment. But the basketball, I think, and the boxing gets the poorest kids. And some kids, such as myself, I never liked team sports, even though my real gift, believe it or not, was basketball and baseball. I was averaging 33 points when I was 13 years old, and they didn't have three-pointers then, and the team score was only like 51. I was a great shooter in basketball, but even though I still was more fascinated by the boxing. I just loved that one-on-one competition without having a team, and winning and getting the trophies. That the trophy was my trophy, not had to share as part of a team. And if someone on the team messed up, that could destroy everything in a team sport. But I mean, you're the whole team, win or lose, in boxing. So boxing fascinated me, and it's a lot of the kids who are in boxing are just that way. They're just totally fascinated with boxing, and they're not attracted to team sports. And so thank God for that, because all of the other sports, mostly that are major sports out here, they're all team sports: basketball, football, hockey, soccer. Boxing is the only one. There's a kid can come in, might be a strange kid, don't like to associate with many people, maybe very bashful, whatever it is, but he can go out here like to box, but he would not blend in other sporting type teams. So I think boxing is very important for the youth. And the fact that in a lot of the cases, a lot of the poor poverty kids, it's a way out of the poverty, the future. Some kids, through financial problems, will not be able to go to college. Some kids just have learning disabilities, which would prevent them from ever being able to do things a lot in our regular world, which we put so much, credibility on academic skills. But through boxing, they're able to possibly make a good living for themselves and become rich and famous. When I think of amateur boxing, I think of a beginning little boy or little girl nowadays that goes to a gym and is just jumping around, wanting to learn how to throw a punch, maybe to try to win a little trophy, to do something that maybe they, especially for little kids who are physically small and would not be able to necessarily grow and compete in basketball and football and the other sports that require someone to be big. Amateur boxing means different things to different people. Some kids get into amateur boxing because of the fact that they can participate in something being physically small, that they couldn't compete on a major level because with other sports because they're physically small. Many kids get into amateur boxing because of parents. The parents, especially a lot of the fathers who have liked boxing or was boxers, they actually start automatically teaching the kids how to box when they're like 5 or 6 years old, so the kid don't have a choice. And you look at many of the kids, Oscar De La Hoya, Shane Mosley, Floyd Mayweather, Roy Jones Jr., those kids got into boxing because they didn't have a choice. Their parents started them to box. And in the case of the Mexican kids and a lot of Hispanic kids, they actually get in it for the fact that they are physically small, a lot of them. They can get in a sport where they can compete on an equal level where, you know, being so small they couldn't effectively play baseball, maybe, or football or basketball. And in a lot of the cases, they look at it as a way out of poverty for a lot of the kids, particularly Hispanic kids, and especially after the unbelievable great success of Oscar De La Hoya, who was a kid, even though he was from a middle-income family, to see him making all these mega millions of dollars, it's been a great inspiration for so many of the Mexican and Hispanic kids. And I think more than any one particular person, I think Oscar De La Hoya should be given credit for the really tremendous influence and influx of kids from Mexican heritage and Puerto Ricans even getting into amateur boxing now. I see a lot of the influence and power in amateur boxing today is as a result of fathers. Everyone is particularly viewing the success of all these recent multi-million-dollar fighters, such as the Roy Joneses and Oscar De La Hoyas, Shane Mosleys, and the Floyd Mayweather Jr.'s, because of the success of these kids who were almost forced into boxing by their fathers. You see a lot of fathers in the gym now, more than ever, even in my gym back at the Kronk Gym, where there used to be just the boxers coming in, the kids coming in on their own. I'd say about probably 60% of the kids who are boxing in my gym in the amateur program are accompanied by their parents today, whether it's fathers or mothers, which is amazing. Parents support kids in all sports, not just boxing. It's unusual. Boxing is the last sport that has got the parental involvement. But parents have come to their kids' baseball games, or football games, or hockey, but never have they came to boxing training sessions the way that they are doing now. And I think that's because of the unbelievable success of so many boxers now who are associated very closely to the parents, and in many cases the parents have become very financially secured as a result of the success of these kids from their boxing, such as the Roy Joneses and the Oscar De La Hoyas and the Shane Mosley. So the parents are looking at it not as just a way of supporting their kids, but if the kids can make it, it's a good chance that they can benefit them also. I don't think that boxing attracts any one particular type of kid. I mean, I've got a lot of the kids who are from wealthy families. I've just had 3 national champions, all from one family, which is very unusual. And they've all been boxing less than a year. It's 2 of them are twins, Joseph and Jacob Bonus. These are Romanian kids whose dad brought them there because they were rough kids, even though they come from a upper middle income family. And then the older brother, who's 14 years old, and the 2 twins were just 12, he came even though he was an honor student. So he just came down with his 2 little brothers. And in less than 1 year's time, they all have won national championships. And in fact, I don't think all 3 of them are undefeated still at almost 20 fights. And then by the same token, I have a lot of the poor inner city kids who really have to sometimes catch 2 or 3 buses to get to the gym and scraping up money. And they still are competing, and they're living on the same level in their training camps and traveling. So boxing attracts people from all different walks of life. And some kids come to boxing because they just plain like boxing. a lot of the success stories you have, such as the Klitschko brothers, Vladimir and Vitaly Klitschko. These are guys who come from a fairly wealthy family. Their father was a big officer in the Russian army. He was a pilot. The mother was a school teacher. But still, they loved sports. They loved the contact one-on-one sports. And as a result of that, the two Klitschko brothers have both became heavyweight champions of the world. When I see a kid come into boxing right off the street, the first thing I do is to teach him his balance and spend time with him and try to make him feel important. And a lot of times, it just maybe if he comes for about a week or two and he sees serious, I like to bring him little T-shirts and stuff with his name on it. And a lot of kids just feeling that they're part of a team or something. They take a lot of pride. And when we send some of the boxers to like a little amateur team tournament, if I have the resources, I like to try to send some of the beginning kids with them so they can realize that by boxing there they get a chance to travel, which means a lot to particularly some of the poor kids who never get to travel anywhere. And just spend maybe a week up there in the tournament just watching all these guys, seeing what can happen, seeing these guys get the medals around their neck, seeing the different tournament activities. So I try to always spend time with the kids traveling. I think traveling is very important for kids. And a lot of kids who went on to be my world champions, Milton McCroy and Thomas Hearns, they said the reason they liked the boxing when they was 12 and 13 as compared to the baseball teams that they played on when they was kids, because in the boxing they got to travel more. So just because of being on the boxing team, they got to travel and go all around the country. And they would love to box, so they quit the other sports. Boxers are different today than they were like everything else is to some degree. The kids are wanting to be more into business now, which is good and bad. And that's why you don't have any boxer, I say, dominating and having these great undefeated records anymore, because they are more into becoming the promoters and sponsorships, and instead of having certain people to take care of those areas and for them to focus strictly on boxing. The great boxers who had the tremendous reigns where they was dominant, such as the Alis and the marvelous Marvin Haglers and Ray Leonard, those guys, they had people who took care of their business and they was focusing on being boxers. But today, nearly every boxer, after he wears a title, he wants to be the promoter, he wants to do this. And so it's a difference. The styles in the rings have changed. It's more showmanship. They're coming in more worried about the music that they're going to come in the ring on is sometimes more important than even the preparation, the training. I mean, these guys cannot even come out of the dressing room if they don't have that right music on now. It's changed more. It's more show business, but it's like so many other things. Boxing has changed a lot in terms of the ethnic background of the people who are participating now on a major level. You have a tremendous more influence of Hispanic kids because the entire country, for the most part, is a big influx of the Hispanic population is growing so much. So that's only normal. And then you had the phenomenal success of Oscar De La Hoya, which has surpassed almost all boxers in the history of the sport in terms of economic profit and the popularity. So that's been a major factor also, particularly with the Mexican community. And just in general, boxing has turned around and changed the same as a lot of the other sports have. So I don't see where it's any different than any other sport.